It is 7 o'clock. We have a quorum. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Hopefully everybody had a chance to peruse the agenda for this evening. And if nobody has any additions or corrections, I'd look for motion to approve the agenda as printed.
Move for approval.
Motion by Sebastian,
I'll second the motion.
second by Jenny. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion is carried. Approval of the minutes from last month, April 21st. Any? Okay, I guess I'm not understanding.
There's a typo on page 3 that I caught.
Oh, that's a typo, okay.
Oh, Mr. Chair, it looks like there's a repeated sentence
Yep, okay.
we need to
I see.
strike. Yep.
Okay, I have it, I missed that. Okay, we have a motion to approve by Laura. We have a second.
I'll second.
Seconded by Josh. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion is carried. Is there anyone in the audience or online that wishes to speak to something that is not on the agenda? Is there anyone in the audience or online that wishes to speak to something that is not on the agenda? One more time, is there anyone in the audience or online that wishes to speak to something that is not on the agenda? Hearing none, we'll move forward to the public hearings. Our first hearing for this evening is Westland Excavating, request for an interim use permit. The applicant is requesting an interim use permit for a 39.5 acre gravel mine on parcel 17.031.0100, the north half of the fractional section 31, and the northeast quarter, and the southeast quarter, section 31, township 141 north, range 45, Keene Township. Look for a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Motion by Ashley, seconded by Brad. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion is carried. Public hearing is open. Take it away, Matt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, this is a request for an interim use mining permit. The applicant, Westland Excavating, the landowners are Philip and Jill Rogers. So this is a 137 acre parcel. It's about a half mile north of CASA 26. Right now it is used as for agriculture, and then there is a little bit of mining that is occurring up on the north, and that's been permitted under a separate permit in 2024. The base zoning is ag general, overlay zoning is resource protection aggregate, and then special protection rivers and streams, kind of just in the southeast corner here. So history on this parcel, in 2023, there was an interim use permit that was granted for a 33 acre gravel pit. That was never actually established. And then a 2024 interim use permit for a 39 acre gravel pit on the north end of the property, as well as the parcel to the north. And then there was a variance in 2025 to the road right-of-way setback that would impact this parcel and then the parcel to the north as well. And so the request is for a 39.5 acre mine with an associated processing. They'd be accessed via 170th Street North to CASA 26 and west on CASA 26. They're seeking times of operation of January through December, Monday through Saturday, 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. Would just have temporary sanitation facilities, no washing at all. All water would be contained on site, no dewatering is proposed, and then fuel would be stored in the fuel trailer. Looking to extract and process rock and sand materials, and then they do have reclamation as well. And so this is kind of roughly the area where they're looking to mine, and then the haul route to the south. None of this would be on prime farmland, and it would be in an area that has a high gravel potential. And here's just some picture of the site. Some considerations. This would be, if you look at 170th Street here, so this is CASA 26, 170th Street goes north. This would be the fourth mine. On this site, there's a mine here, 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 and then this fourth one would go here. There's also the county pit. One of the county pits is right here as well. This road can be in pretty rough shape, just because there isn't really any maintenance on it. The county, we don't contract with the township to maintain this road, so it's really up on the operators to maintain it. We do have consistent operating hours, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. that you as a planning commission try to apply. There have been some comments from landowners on the haul road, and then just the fact that haulers are driving onto his property to avoid some rough spots on the road. So looking at maintenance as well, and we went out there and looked at it and kind of saw where that was happening. So there's going to have to be some coordination with all the haulers and pit operators on this road to make sure that
Can I ask
they're.
a question? Thank you. Matt, are they, when you reference how the drivers are moving off of the actual roadway, are they going there then to the west in that bin site through that gravel? Is that what he's talking about?
Yeah, that's my understanding. Yeah, specifically kind of along here. It's like not the greatest picture, but yep. So how this proposal aligns with our comprehensive plan, we do have a goal to foster a balanced approach to aggregate resource extraction that is compatible with the natural resources and rural character of Clay County. It's an area that's already characterized by ag use and gravel. They have proposed incorporating dust control, stormwater, erosion control, progressive reclamation, which should reduce impacts to natural resources and the rural character of the area. We also have an objective to avoid or mitigate against impacts to groundwater, surface water, native prairie, woodlands, and wetlands for new or expanding mining operations. Again, they have indicated in the application that they would be containing stormwater on site, avoiding off-site discharge, maintaining erosion control, reclaiming mined areas, would be subject to any wetland review and stormwater as well. We require phased-in reclamation plans and bonds to ensure mines are reclaimed as mining progresses. So they're estimating about $1,000 per acre to return this to ag land once it's been mined. So looking at a $40,000 reclamation bond. And then to consider the cumulative impacts of existing nearby mining operations for new and expanding operations on the environment, ag lands, residential areas, and transportation infrastructure. I think really in this area, there is some cumulative impacts that we're starting to see, especially with the roads. So some coordination is going to be necessary. Obviously, maintaining this road is not solely on the responsibility of Westland, but would require some effort from the other operators as well. Any questions for me?
So this proposed mine permit would be south of where they're driving on private property to go get
Be
around?
north.
North, okay.
Yep.
So they would not be accessing that area at all?
Well, they'd have to drive. So this is roughly the property in question, where the drivers might be using this bin site to kind of skirt some rough spots in the road. And the proposed mine would be here, and then we've got a mine here, here, and here.
Okay, I had it
reversed.
turned around the other, okay.
Yep.
So they're all using the same road. They would be
Correct.
using less of the road than the other three mines. But they're all
Yes.
going around that.
Yep.
Okay. And I guess my other question is, why isn't Keene Township maintaining the road?
I think just because it's, there's not really any residences on it, it essentially terminates or becomes a kind of a cart path up here. So there's just really,
The goat trail.
yeah. Yep. So
Thank you.
when I went up there, was it last week? Yeah. I've definitely seen that road in way worse shape than it was last week, for sure. So there's definitely been some maintenance going on with it. But there are a couple soft spots.
Well, there is on other, township roads in my area.
Yep. So,
Okay. Any other questions?
How many other companies are there? I know there's 3 other pits. Is there 3 other companies then as well?
yes.
Oh. So coordination of maintenance would be
Yep.
difficult, possibly.
They could split it up 25% for each, yeah. Yeah. So,
Mr. Chair and Matt, getting back to the condition of the road and going off the road, if the township isn't proactive in taking care of it, which looks like they're not really doing that, how does the if they can't work together, I mean, is there any teeth in anything that, not the best question to pose, but how, it's for their best interest to take care of it, obviously. When it doesn't happen, what's the next logical step?
Mr. Chair and Mr. Syken, it'd be through just enforcement of conditions on the permit. And, all of these companies on their permits have a condition that they got to maintain the haul road.
Does that come through complaints or physically going out there inspecting it?
Typically, that's complaint driven, just because of the number of permits out there. I'd say it's typically complaint driven.
Thank you.
And that makes sense. And when it gets to be a point where it's too rough, they'll take care of it because that'll cost dollars too, so.
Yep.
Okay, anyone? Okay, hearing no other questions for Matt, would the applicant care to talk about the project? If so, come up to the mic and state your name for the record.
Hi, I'm Jeff with Westland Excavating. We're looking to open up a pit there to get closer to town for logistic purposes. We have a whole bunch of sand we need to bring to the data center in Harwood this year yet, so it would save us like 12 miles around to work out of there, I guess. You guys got any questions or anything?
Have you talked with other permit holders that are using that haul road about coordination of maintenance, or?
No, not yet, I guess, but I guess I'd make sure it was maintained from the highway to our pit anyway.
And that makes sense.
Gets tough on trucks to beat them down, that stuff, that's for sure.
Okay, anyone else have any questions for Jeff? Go ahead.
Thank you. Is the majority of the material just sand fill?
Yep.
Okay.
I think when they've dug out there, there is some rockier parts, but it's mostly sand.
Okay, thank you. I guess because of protocol, need to ask if there's Anybody in the audience or online that wishes to speak for or against? Is there anyone online or in the audience that wishes to speak for or against? Is there anyone in the audience or online that wishes to speak for or against? Hearing none, look for a motion to close the public hearing.
So offered?
Motion
Second.
by Commissioner Mojo, second by Ashley. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion is carried. Public hearing is closed. Okay. We will go through the findings of fact. The interim use will not be injurious to the health, safety, morals, and general welfare of residents of Clay County. It's following the same criteria, I believe, that anybody disagree with approving the first point?
I would agree with the approval finding.
Okay, thank you. The interim use will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity for the purpose already permitted.
Not expected to be injurious, as the surrounding area already contains aggregate extraction and permit conditions that are followed.
Thank you. The establishment of the interim use will not impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of surrounding property for uses predominant in the area.
I'd agree with that.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
can I also just add a caveat in item 2? While I agree with the finding that the rest of the board is, I think we should talk about private property impacts only because the bin site is currently having some sort of, usage on that private property. So not sure if the county should put up a private property sign since it's not just this company going forward. But I feel like we should at least acknowledge that travel routes should not interfere with any private. I don't know how we put that in there. Do you put it in there or just in the minutes note and then that we've talked about it, and then if it is an issue with this company, then we could go back to it? I don't know.
Maybe put something in the conditions about the private property encroachment?
Yeah, and Mr. Chair and Commissioner Mojo, we could maybe do that, but it would only apply to this permit.
Right.
What we also could do is I could work with the township and the companies that are using this haul road to maybe put up some signage.
I think that
And the signage would
probably-
be to stay on the road and stay off private property. And no engine brakes, just because of the number of trucks that are,
Okay, then I'm fine with what.
we could do that, but we should
the
probably
finding
note it in the minutes
component.
too, yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the establishment of the interim use will not impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of surrounding property for uses predominant in the area. It's
Agreed to that one. I think we're on 4 now.
doing exactly what's already going on there. Adequate measures have been or will be taken to provide utilities, access roads, drainage, off-street parking, and loading spaces as required by this ordinance. That it really is not applicable. There's almost 40 acres, there's plenty of room to park your payloader and your fuel trailer. Adequate measures have been or will be taken to prevent or control offensive odor, fumes, dust, noise, vibration, water pollution, and soil erosion, so that none of these will constitute a nuisance, and to control lighted signs or other lights in such a manner that no disturbance to neighboring properties will result. So there is no neighbors. There won't be any need for signs. You may need lighting depending on what you're hauling, depending on time of year. Should not be an issue. Or won't be an issue. The interim use will not create an excessive burden on current or anticipated public infrastructure or services that serve or are proposed to serve the area, including but not limited to parks, schools, public safety services, roads, water supply, sanitary sewers, storm sewers, unless the county and the applicant establish a development agreement that determines how such impact will be resolved. Again, pretty much not applicable. The interim use allowed by this ordinance in conforms with any specific use standards established in Chapter 8 as may be applicable. There. The interim use is consistent with the goals and objectives of the Clay County Comprehensive and Transportation Plan and any comprehensive plan of a township or city as may be applicable. This is definitely in line with the plan that we've worked on the last couple of years, and the township would have said something, and so that is good. Okay. Now, Matt, do you have, okay. Now, were the hours,
So, Mr. Chair, these essentially are the conditions that were on the permit that was approved in 2023. That mine was just never established. So the only really modifications are the termination date. The hours are the same. That's 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., hauling only on Saturday, 7 to 2. And then just the bond, updating that information.
yes, Commissioner Mojo?
Maybe more of a technical question, understanding that it's a 39.5 acre pit, but with the reclamation bond being $40,000, does that then signal to DNR? Does DNR look at that and say, well, actually, is it a 40 acre, and then triggers the EAW? Or is it our practice to round? I'm just trying to save you from an EAW with the DNR.
I think the condition number 7 will take care of that, just
Okay.
because it's, the maximum is stated in there.
Got it, thank you.
But could certainly change the bond to 39.5.
And this has been, this property was in 23 and/or in 21. Soil and water, WACA, has been looked at?
That's my
Needs to be
understanding.
Looked at again? Okay. Or would it need to be looked at again?
I don't think so. So that condition could be, well, we should probably keep that condition in just because of the wetlands on the southeast part of the property.
Okay, yeah.
Yep.
You're. Okay, and it has an out if they have a urgent need to haul. Does anybody on the board have any questions or comments about the 13 conditions? I guess my only is $1,000 an acre should be sufficient for the reclamation? Or how is that
Mr.
number?
Chair, I would think so, just because the property itself is, the terrain is level, there's not really any relief. They're putting it back to ag production, so I definitely think that's doable.
Okay,
Mr. Chair?
yes?
Thank you. I just want to note that item number 8 differs from what the applicant put in. We've got January through December, Monday through Saturday, 6 to 8, and just understanding that we're conforming with what other permits are. You're aware what the new hours are.
So, Mr. Chair and Commissioner Mojo, certainly open to, we have done January to December before, so
I'm
that's,
not advocating for it. What I'm saying is in their application, that's what they put, but because we are trying to streamline to make sure everything is within the same understanding that that's what this board typically preferences.
Sure.
That all 4 pits will be the same that are on. I guess, does the applicant understand and acknowledge the 13 requirements or conditions up there and able to work with them?
So this will be April to December then, or can we do January for hauling or?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, you certainly could. It would just be a
We've switched our-
contacting,
oh,
it would just be contacting me and letting me know. Essentially, there's this clause, if you have to operate beyond these hours or dates, then you could contact me and we could work that out.
So we do that on a case-by-case basis instead of giving
Yeah,
everybody a blanket.
came in last year to switch our, yeah. Okay, that'll work.
Okay. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, you could, just to make it more clear, add stated dates and hours, as opposed to just hours.
Yep, and then you have the must contact.
Yep.
Not should or might or if you wanna.
Yeah.
And they will. Okay, hearing no further question, I look for motion to either approve the permit with the 13 conditions and with the modification on line 8, or deny the permit.
I'll look to, oh,
You go ahead.
okay. I'll look to approve the interim use permit with the 13 conditions, as well as the addition of dates for number 8.
I'll second that.
Motion by Ashley, seconded by Brad. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Permit is approved. Thank you, everyone. Did that. Okay, unfinished business. Anything on your list, Matt?
Nothing for me, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and then on the new business. You have some information on data centers?
Yes, correct. I know earlier this year, there's been some requests from planning commissioners if we have a light agenda to spend some time talking about some up-and-coming or hot-button land use issues, developments, things like that. And data centers, it seems like that's a timely thing to talk about. And so I thought I'd just give a kind of a brief presentation that I put together on just data centers, what they are, history of them, some Minnesota relevant information as well. So with that, get going into the wacky world of data centers. So I want to go over just how data centers, kind of the history of data centers and how this type of development would impact potentially counties, planning, land use. Have some case studies as well from around the United States. So I know we've started hearing about data centers a lot more in the news, just with AI and crypto, and there certainly are data centers that are dedicated solely to those two uses, but really they've kind of been around since the 1940s. Looking at just early mainframes, huge computers, NASA being a big kind of early adopter of what would be a data center. And then moving into the 1980s and the 90s, we'd start to see server rooms. So these are actually data centers that are housed just on site in businesses, just really banking, finance, universities, military. And then in the 2000s and the 2010s with just the internet and then the cloud, everything is on the cloud. We don't have anything backed up on floppy disks or CD-ROMs anymore. All your photos go to the cloud, and that all has to be stored somewhere physically. And so data centers these larger data centers have been around for quite a while. In the early 2000s and the 2010s, especially in California and Virginia, and then the Pacific Northwest as well. And then into the 2020s, we have moving to software as services, AI, streaming, just really an increased demand for these data centers. And so what are they used for? Essentially, everything that runs digitally is running through a data center. So your 911, GIS, records, elections, emergency communications, banking, payroll, customer data, medical records, imaging, your everyday internet that you use for email, photos, streaming, all of that, cloud services, and also AI and analytics as well. Most data centers are basically storing information that we all use. There are different types of data centers. There's kind of four main types. First being an enterprise data center, and that's typically owned and run on campus or on site by one specific entity or company. There's edge or modular, so those are a lot smaller facilities. You might see like a crypto mining center could be like a convict's like shipping container, essentially. So they're a lot more smaller scale. Co-location is where a company might build a data center facility and then rent out like servers space to a bunch of different companies. And then there's hyperscale. And so these are huge campuses. They're typically like your Google, Meta, Microsoft. They're doing all of their cloud computing, things like that, on these giant campuses. And those are the biggest ones. So really, all comes down to 5 things with a data center. It's essentially computers stored in servers that need power. They need a network to interact with the world. They get very hot, so they need cooling. And then safety and security. So thinking of like fires, restricting access, things like that. In the building is servers, their power equipment, cooling systems, and then fiber connections. They're actually making some data centers now where they're called like darks or zero light centers where they don't even have any people in them, just because they can just be run completely autonomous. So again, we got the word data centers, but it can mean a lot of different things. So scale is really important. You can have a smaller facility that's on like a 1 to 10 megawatt. One of the co-location are going to be a little more mid-size, and then your hyperscale are going to be 100 plus, 200, 250 megawatts. So these, typically the hyperscale ones will need their own substation, their own transmission, cooling, and all of that. And so looking at just nationally, the demand is growing really, really fast. So just looking at it as a share of US electricity consumed overall, in 2014, it was just under 2% of all electricity consumed in the United States was used by data centers. In 2023, 4.4%. I think now we're actually up to about 5.5% in 2025, and projected to get up potentially to 12% of all electricity consumed in the United States would be consumed by data centers. And so this is kind of where the growth is really centered on, or where it's happening in the United States. Virginia is really the data center hotspot, just because of its essentially, there's cheap power, there's a lot of fiber connections, there's a lot of proximity to key users, really close to the undersea cables that basically send, the internet, make the internet global. Texas is another big space, just because they have a lot of good tax incentives and tax breaks for data centers, cheap land, cheap electricity. Same with Arizona, low electricity rates as well. And then, like in the Pacific Northwest, you have a lot of, you have the cool, dry climate, and you have a lot of dedicated power, hydropower, to power these things. And so siting really depends on four things: electricity availability, access to water for cooling, though not every data center, as we'll get into, needs water for cooling. There are some that don't use any water at all, and they use fans. They use a lot of electricity. Your fiber network, so you want to be close to good fiber optic infrastructure. And then zoning and incentives. So a lot of jurisdictions or municipalities, they have incentives for data centers. Georgia is becoming a really big spot for data centers because they have laws specifically that make it very attractive to locate there. In Minnesota, I think we have a sales tax exemption for some data center equipment, which is an incentive as well. So even though we use data centers, or we rely on them, we depend on them for our kind of digital life, they do have very real local impacts. And so these are some questions that, as a county should consider with data center siting. In terms of a power source, so where these data centers get their power, a lot of it is from natural gas. Renewables make up some, nuclear, coal, hydropower as well. But really natural gas is kind of the big one. In terms of water use, or it really depends on how they're cooling the servers. So I mentioned dry air cooling. Doesn't really use a lot of water, but it does generate a lot of noise with fans and a lot of electricity. There's evaporative cooling. That uses a lot of water. Then there's liquid cooling. So I think the one in Harwood is using this liquid cooling, so they don't have to use as much water as like an evaporative cooling data center would use. Noise is a big issue as well. There's a lot of different sources of noise once these are up and running. And what's really tricky about the noise from data centers is it often falls under the decibel thresholds for noise pollution rules. And so it could be operating at a certain decibel level that doesn't trigger any noise pollution rule violations, but it could still be very, very annoying and detrimental to folks who might live nearby. So that's a very important thing to consider. noise being one of the biggest kind of complaints, and the water issues as well. And then in terms of water and electricity demand, so I think the two things to pay attention to here would be like the facility size, or three things: facility size, the home equivalent of electricity used, and then just the amount of water that these facilities can use per day and per year. So if you're looking at like a 250 megawatt facility, that's equivalent to about 200,000 homes in power that's being used, and 1.32 million gallons per day of water being used if they're doing the evaporative cooling. So these can have really big impacts in terms of water consumption and power usage. Some benefits, local benefits to data centers. Obviously, you got a new tax base from buildings and equipment. Lots of construction, so jobs, things like that generated. A lot of times these companies will pay for utility, road, broadband improvements. There's not as much demand for other types of services with these, just because they don't bring a whole lot of people. And again, there's some local agreements with roads, providing grants, workforce support, and things of that nature, some incentives. And then also with the potential benefits, there's also costs and risks, power capacity, so utility upgrades being expensive, rate impacts. You've probably heard about the utility in Nevada, in Lake Tahoe, that has decided that they are going to cut 75,000 households off of their power supply and redirect that power to data centers in Nevada. And so they'll have to find a new, basically, utility. So that's a kind of an extreme impact. Water demand, noise and light, air emissions with some of these, just with their backup generators, and then a land use fit. I mean, these are large industrial facilities. Typically, they occur outside of towns. And then the jobs as well. So typically, depending on the size, they're really not as much. Once construction winds down, the number of jobs created, permanent jobs created, is not as big as you might think. So, looking at some different areas in the United States that have dealt with data centers, just going to go through a few spots, starting in Loudoun County, Virginia. So this is an area. It's called Data Center Alley. It's in northern Virginia. It's basically 70% of the internet traffic in the entire world passes through this county. And they have, I think they have something like 250 data centers in the county, with a capacity of 6 gigawatts. So that's how much energy is being consumed by these. You know, it's been good for their tax base, infrastructure investment, but it's pretty saturated. There's visual impacts, transmission needs. There is some pushback that's happening as well. This is an example of where you have a data center growth that's happening, and it almost becomes like a magnet for more and more development. So this is kind of an example of a mature area for data centers, just because they've been, it's been a major land use for several years, decades even. And they're in that mature stage right now where they might be hitting their limit. In Prince William County, there was a data center that was proposed. So this is kind of a rendering of that data center right next to the Manassas National Battlefield Park. And so this was actually approved. The county did rezone the property, but they didn't provide the proper public notice. So that went through the courts and it got all the way to the state Supreme Court. And that zoning was invalidated essentially because they did not follow proper public notice procedure. There's a lot of pushback, just because, and the pushback is based on rural character, historic view sheds, just the proximity to this park as well, this historic site. And so this might still happen. It's still considered active, but for now, just with that public, it's a good example of why you need to have a good defensible record for if your decisions are ever challenged. West Des Moines, Iowa, Microsoft has been operating several data centers there since I think, like, I want to say the 90s. And it's kind of been this would be more of maybe a positive case study. Although there are more data centers planned, and they've had some unexpected, essentially, uses or increased uses of water, where, 1 month in July, almost 12 million gallons of water was used. The city and Microsoft are now working together. Actually, I think Microsoft has paid for a lot of utility upgrades and for the city. But it's when it gets really hot, that's when these data centers really start using their water. So they might not use a whole lot the rest of the year, but that 1 month can really, of extreme temperatures, can cause very excessive water use. So that's one thing that's really important when asking about water, is because of that sudden demand for water, it can have an impact on other users of that water as well. If, you can't just make 11.5 million gallons of water out of nothing. So if it's not there, someone's not going to be able to use it. In the Dalles, Oregon, Google's been there since 2006, just because, again, it's kind of got the trifecta of cheap land, reliable power, fiber capacity. This was an interesting case because there wasn't a lot of opposition to this until people started asking questions again about water. There was a newspaper in the Dalles that was going to report on water usage by Google on one of their data centers. And the city actually stepped in and sued the paper on behalf of Google. So the city and Google were kind of in a partnership here. They sued the paper. That lawsuit was eventually dropped, just because Google said, well, our water usage isn't really a trade secret anymore. So now we know that they use something like 500 million gallons of water in 1 year, which was I think ended up being about 40% of the entire town's water consumption. The XAI facility in Memphis, Tennessee is probably one that's gotten, I don't know if anyone's heard about that. This essentially powers the Grok chatbot. And it got a lot of press essentially because they didn't have they didn't have the transmission, they didn't have the power for the facility. So they brought in these diesel and natural gas turbines, generators, and they've just been running those 24/7. And so they're running into some air permitting issues, essentially. They built too fast. They got all their approvals, and then temporary power generation became permanent power generation. And that ended up causing noise, emissions, and other issues as well. And then in Becker, Minnesota, there was a proposal from Google for a data center by the Sherco power plant. Quickly turned from a local issue to a PUC issue, just because the proposal was to use 250 diesel backup generators. So similar to the XAI data center in Memphis. But the PUC didn't like that idea, and so that is currently on hold now, and I think Google says they're not really looking at developing there at this time. But that's where a project was approved locally, and then the state stepped in and said, no, actually, this is under our jurisdiction because of the amount of power that's going to be generated there. And so that killed that project. So essentially, kind of what this shows is, I think it's really important if a data center is being proposed in Clay County to have some good, clear expectations of where it can be located, what are some standards, and what information does the project proposer need to provide? Because a lot of these projects are, there's not a lot of information that's provided up front. And so if we ever consider adding this to our ordinance, I think that's probably one of the most important things we can do is make a list of information and data that is required as part of the application, just so you know exactly what the project is and what its impacts might be. And in Minnesota, we, at the county level, do have essentially the authority to review and make approvals on things like data centers at this time. There could be some energy review, so if there's, for example, a data center that's going to generate their own energy, either through solar, wind, or whatever, if it exceeds a certain size, then that would be a PUC, the energy component would. But as far as the data center is concerned, that's still something that's under local jurisdiction. There could potentially be some environmental review options as well, although there really isn't anything in our environmental, Minnesota Environmental Protection Act for data centers at this point. And then again with water and air emissions, it's almost a certainty that any large data center would require a water appropriations permit from the DNR and potentially an air emissions permit from the state as well. And so in Minnesota, I know that there's been 10 data centers planned. I think maybe one has been built so far down in the Rosemont area. Most of them, these projects have been killed to some extent, or they're just not happening. But in Cass County, they recently just added data centers as a conditional use to their commercial districts. So they essentially defined a data center, and then they just added it to their use table, but they don't have any standards or anything like that for like application requirements, setbacks, any things like that. They just added it as a conditional use. In Nobles County, there was a Geronimo Power. They recently tried to do a text amendment to allow data centers as a conditional use in their agricultural district, and that was denied by their county board.
I was actually gonna highlight something, if I might, on the Nobles County piece. I know that was a 950-acre project that Nobles County had hundreds of people providing insight. And one of the pieces that commissioners in Nobles County said was helpful to that, and I'm not sure if it would, but the Ag Preservation District, that the majority of the acres, 70% of Nobles County is in the Ag Preservation District, and so that was the helpful piece to the text amendment conversation, What are you hearing about counties adding those types of provisions into what overlays, if you will, as we deal with these larger scale projects potentially down the road?
I haven't really heard much from other counties, especially with data centers, but, you know, Stearns County does have some preservation districts that seem to work well with guiding certain types of development, and that's something that I could definitely look into.
Yeah, I think
more.
it might be helpful to just to look into that and see how that works. I know when, you know, even in the prior hearing, we talked about prime farmland and making sure that that's something that we continue to keep top of mind. But if having a preservation district gave more teeth to something like that, I would be interested in researching further.
So just some, what we can regulate in terms of data centers is really looking at land use impacts. So if we ever wanted to consider an amendment for data centers for our land development code, really we'd want to define what the use is, decide which districts would be appropriate for a data center, definitely require a CUP, set measurable standards, and then also an important thing would be to plan for expansion, because it seems like with a lot of these data centers, it's not just like a one, especially the co-location and the hyperscale, it's not just a one and done thing. They're already, before the last building is built, they're already planning for the next one. And in a lot of those regions of the U.S. that have seen a lot of data center development that I've just highlighted, that's the trend with each of them, is they just keep expanding. And so looking at setbacks and screening, noise limits, water use reporting, generator limits, road and utility costs, and then phased expansion, I think is all very important. Also considering different sizes too. Something like we do with like feedlots is we have different setbacks depending on the size. Could definitely have something size related to our standards as well. And so really, you know, what we need to be considered is power, cooling, local impacts to nearest residences, project expansions, who's paying for utility upgrades, what is that peak water demand, what kind of backup generation, and what happens after construction. These are all questions that as a county we need to consider. And then just to finally, just as a takeaway, data centers are essential infrastructure to our lives. You know, if you have a phone, if you have a computer, you are using if you use the internet, you are using a data center. There are benefits, but all the costs are borne locally. And if we were to develop an ordinance or amend our ordinance for data centers, I think it would put us in a good position, so we're being proactive and not reactive. That's all I got. Any questions?
Yeah, I have, you know, some experience with cooling and water and glycol and evaporation, you know, different, and I realize that the West Des Moines, I believe that's river water, so how is that water treated at all, and where the hell do they go with 13 million gallons of water? I mean, does if it doesn't come out of a river, if it's coming out of an aquifer, is it just getting dumped into a wastewater treatment plant and then it's gone?
That's in West Des Moines. That's some of the upgrades that they had to make to their water treatment and their wastewater treatment plant, was to handle that amount of water that was coming into it. And so that was an instance where Microsoft paid for those upgrades.
Because I've worked and lived in areas where there were power plants on the river and, you know, paper mills kind of thing where the, you know, and then it's, the water is 7, 8, 10,
Yep.
12 degrees warmer than the water going, you know, in, and that created another, yeah, I just can't.
Yeah, and that's another interesting thing about some of these larger data centers is studies have shown that the like the ambient temperature for like half a mile around them is warmer on average, like can be up to 16 degrees warmer.
Okay, so if the one in Harwood, if they use a, you know, a glycol system, that heat still has to go
Still has to go
off those
somewhere.
plates, has to go somewhere. Yeah. Darn. Thank you. That's a needful and scary presentation, so.
Mr. Chair and Matt, I do not understand how they're used, how many they need. Apparently they need a lot more. I would just think that if you could keep working on researching other states, other counties, other cities. I know a lot of counties in North Dakota are going through this problem right now with non-disclosure agreements. The governor says don't sign them, that was his suggestion, but they had huge setbacks and the courts determined those were not legal to have like 10 or 20 mile setbacks and things. So it's gonna take a lot of work on your part, your guys' part to even initiate this. And one guy was joking about, I imagine they'll keep refurbishing the equipment that's in there. He was telling me that when they fail to be used any longer, his joke, he said it'd be a good hog barn or a turkey barn, but I know it's here to stay, obviously, and just need to be, because my boy has done a lot of filming at the one in Enderlin, and they got lots of problems down there. Lots of problems. And you hear about it on the radio quite often, too, so keep working at it, keep getting information, talk to your fellow planning people, and I don't know, you need to be proactive, there's no doubt about it, so working at it.
Just a kind of a general question, when these things do come to a community, where do they start? Do they start by reaching out to commissioners? Do they reach out to you? Like, how do we know if Google or Meta or whoever is considering building a data center in our county?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it could take a variety of paths. I'll just say that I've fielded one inquiry for Clay County so far. But I know that in other communities, it'll start with like elected officials or administration. So it really could take a variety of paths for how that starts.
I would say the majority of the time, Matt has been the point of contact, and then he is telling us what he's hearing.
Thank you.
I didn't know about the data center until just now, though.
Okay.
And then you hear so much, you don't have any idea really anymore how much is, you know, truth at Allendale or Enderlin, you know, if you choose to, you can hear or read about it daily, something new going on.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, and the one in, you know, the one up by Harwood, that certainly was contentious because, you know, Harwood did it and then Fargo wanted it and, you know, lots of lawsuits
And then they permitted it without letting us know that we had a road project. I mean, there are unintended consequences. We had 26 scheduled to be repaired, and you heard them talk about the amount of material that's going out. And so how do you, with those states having separate paths of who needs to be informed, there are challenges to interstate commerce.
Yeah.
And it's not just two different counties, it's two different
States.
states. It's not like us and Becker where we, you know, we're putting stuff through each other's counties daily. And, you know, that's why, you know, the prior applicant was here tonight was because of the Harwood project.
Yep.
You know, it's again on similar scale or even bigger than the Sanford project from a decade ago or however long.
Yep, or the Amazon or,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, Amazon or, the Castleton ethanol. Yep, plant.
That's Rolson, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions, more questions or comments for Matt?
Yep, thank you. Yeah, and Mr. Chair, this is something that I can just continue to kind of monitor at the state and county level. I know there's some potential things in the works in terms of developing like a model data center ordinance, looking at some changes for environmental review and things of that nature. So also happy to just, you know, I'll keep in communication and, you know, if we ever get to a point where we're feel ready to draft an ordinance for data centers, something I can be ready to do.
And I've had some conversations with people have approached me about what ifs, you know, in Clay County, so we definitely, it needs to be, and you know, we've talked a few times, and I think we definitely need to do some research and be at least thinking about it proactively. I mean, it's necessary. Okay, anything else to bring up this evening?
I'd like to bring up one item. It's something I think many of you may have been contacted about already. Yeah, Joel obviously has. The over 50 megawatt solar, I don't want to call them farms, I want to call them infrastructures, but that potentially could be on our horizon. We had many residents calling, stopping by, had a lot of conversations with them. Worried about the setbacks, worried about any screenings that we could potentially have. You know, we're not fighting this. You know, they're coming. If they're coming, they're coming. But as Matt has said, we have stuff on feedlots. We have the setbacks. We have, you know, restrictions on these other projects. And I think it would be a good idea to, I don't know if we can put this on the agenda for next month to talk about this, to have a discussion about potentially adding some, you know, at our Clay County level, some setbacks, some screening. But I know there's a lot of folks that would probably like to come and attend that meeting, so I don't know how that would work.
So, Mr. Chair and Commissioner Hang, would this be in addition to the setbacks and screening requirements that we already have in our ordinance for solar?
So those are under 50 megawatts, is that correct?
Yes.
So these would be for over 50 megawatt.
I will just say that if we do put anything specifically for over 50 megawatt, that will be preempted by the Public Utilities Commission. We just do not have the ability to regulate anything over 50 megawatts. So if we could put it in our ordinance, but it will not do anything. We can't enforce it because it's outside of our jurisdiction. What we could do is essentially provide a conduit for comments that could go to the Public Utilities Commission when they receive an application for a project and when they have public meetings and hearings about it. That's something that we could do. But I've talked to our county attorney about this as well, and it's very clear that we cannot regulate anything over 50 megawatts, even if we had something in our ordinance.
You did say that they're pretty receptive to anything that we would have in our ordinance?
My understanding is that they would consider it, yes. Mhm.
Which may be worth looking at it.
Yep.
But-
And it's something we could definitely put on the agenda for discussion.
Just, yeah.
Yep,
Just wanted to put that plug in there, so.
yep.
one of the things that Matt and I have talked to specifically about that is, have, that perhaps making the comments as this group might have more weight than
Please use your microphone.
them having a recommendation from the Clay County Planning Commission might have a little, maybe have a little bit more weight if we say, well, we'd like, but, yeah, I don't know that if everybody got phone calls, but I know that, I'm pretty sure all of us did. So, but thanks for bringing it up.
Yeah, and one thing I will say, Mr. Chair, about our ordinance is that there is some discretion that you as planning commissioners have in the solar ordinance for additional setbacks or screening or agrivoltaics, prime farmland, things like that. And so if we do, if and when there's an application that's submitted to the Public Utilities Commission, we as a planning commission can take a look at that. And we could maybe even look at it like as if we were looking at a solar project that would come before you, and look at planning commission recommendations for screening, setbacks, and things like that, that you as a planning commission would put it on a project. If that does that make sense? Yep, okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I think to that piece as well, and, obviously, I really appreciate that we're talking about this, because similar to the conversation earlier about making sure we have standardized additional component conditions for setbacks and the like, I think it's important that we name it, that there could potentially be something significantly larger. I do think there is a challenge now that we know some of the proposal, if that would look, hold up in court, similar to what that other county is dealing with. But I think it's really important, and we've talked to the townships about helping them even name ordinances in their own township ordinances. That's a first step that I think is really important. And then I would like us to think, if we can't control it, but we still need to provide comment in some capacity, if these go to the PUC, what is that standardized comment, if you will, if we do have an ability to ask for additional conditions to be added in for screening or access roads, those components. You can't get it if you don't ask for it, but I think it's important that there are challenges that I think we can work through by providing those comments.
And Mr. Chair and Commissioners, one thing that I'm happy to do too is put together a kind of presentation on the PUC process as well. That's something I can certainly put together at some point. It doesn't have to be next month, but maybe even closer to when we might expect to be, when an application might be submitted, just so we're in a good position to react to it and provide substantive comments.
I'm seeing some, yes, we would like that to happen sometime in the third quarter.
Mr. Chair and Matt, along with Commissioner Mojo's comments, maybe you wouldn't know this, but does the PUC have standardized, you mentioned setbacks and screening, to name two. Are they consistent in all of their requirements, like what Ashley was talking about? Or are they kind of all over the board depending on where it's at?
I think it's location dependent. One thing I can do is I can check with, there's a couple other counties that have had these larger scale, utility scale solar projects, and I can look and see what their process was like and what the PUC ended up doing for permit conditions in terms of setbacks and things like that.
I think that'd be helpful to get a base idea on
Sure.
where they start at.
Okay. Thank you for the question, Ashley, and starting the conversation. Hearing nothing else, I will look for a motion to adjourn, but just note that June is special, so it's the fourth Tuesday and not the third.
June 23rd.
So hearing no further discussion, look for a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Motion by Brad, seconded by Ashley. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everyone.